all this into some kind of a technical as well as a working definition of big data, which is what I will do in the first few slides before I get down into more details of how we can approach and analyze big data. So I'm moving on to my next slide, which is a more definition-oriented slide. We all know that a subject like big data, which has many different dimensions, is very difficult to define. One can only describe it in a very wide term. So I'm just taking some of these definitions which are available in the market today. So what are the definitions given by industry analysts such as Gartner or Forrester, or leading technology firms like IBM or Oracle, which are very active in the big data space? So one thing, if you look at in the definitions that you see here, so the theme is that we are dealing with variety, volume, and velocity. That is, we're dealing with a large amount of data. We are dealing with data that is coming in different kinds of structures, unstructured, semi-structured, and structured. And we are dealing with data which is coming in at a very high velocity, which means a lot of real-time data, a lot of data that is streaming in at you. So this combination of data, which has all these dimensions, and IBM has added a fourth dimension, which they call as veracity, because we are also concerned about what is the quality of data that is coming in, how clearly it is defined, and things like this. So if you put all these four things together, so we have these four dimensions which converge to define and distinguish the use of big data. So the other way to look at it is that we are looking at the ability of an organization to store, process, and access all the data that it needs. Here the emphasis is on the term all the data that it needs, which means that we are not ignoring any kind of data, that we are not throwing away any kind of data, but rather we are interested in collecting as much as we can without making any value judgments on whether the data will be useful or not. So that's another way of looking at big data, where the concern on data warehousing and data management in all these days has been about structuring data, cleaning it up, taking a smaller set of data, putting it in one repository. So big data is kind of totally going against that kind of a thinking, saying that let's not ignore any data. Let's try to get all that we can into our into that enterprise. So this is the definition of big data from a market and industry perspective. But I wanted to start my presentation with the more working definition, which captures the essence of big data and which allows us to look at it from competency dimensions. So I'm moving on to my next slide, which is giving you the working definition of big data. So it's a very simple definition. So here we are saying that big data is about understanding the relations among diverse pieces of information that were typically considered difficult to capture and analyze in the data warehouse era. So in a sense, we are actually allowing the data to speak to us. So that's why industry experts talk about letting the data speak to you, which means many things, of course. The fact that we can get data, the fact that we can analyze it, the fact that we can sense what is happening within the data set, and things like this. So this is a more operational or a working definition of big data, which gives us an understanding of the kind of competencies that's required. So I'm going to get into details of what kind of capabilities and competencies are required based on this kind of a definition, which is about understanding the relations within that information that we are collecting. So moving on to my next slide, which is a very important slide. Here, basically I'm talking about the change in the mindset that's required for big data. This is very key as far as the competency is concerned, that we are talking about three major paradigm shifts as far as understanding data is concerned. One is that at an enterprise level, we are ready to analyze vast amounts of data rather than settle for very smaller sets. So that means no longer are we interested in sampling, worrying about what's the size of data that we need to have. We are more worried about what kind of information that we need to get rather than worrying about how much we can store. So at an enterprise level, we should be ready to analyze vast amounts of data, which means making all the technology investments that's required, making all the infrastructure investments that's required. So that's one mind shift that we are talking about, that we are ready to take on large volume of data. The second major mind shift that we are talking about is embracing real world messiness of the data. So what I mean by this is, earlier we were discarding many kinds of information, saying that this is not structured. I mean, we were not able to handle semi-structured or unstructured data, and therefore we were ignoring that. Today we are saying that that's a kind of data precisely which is very important, and therefore we will go after that data which may not be structured now, which will be in a very crude form. It could be totally unstructured, it could be very real time, but it could come to us in a very messy way. The data quality may be very poor, but we are not worried about that. We are not looking for exact data. We are looking at all the data that could be available. It could be the sentiment of a customer, it could be the change in behavior of the customer, it could be the change in mood of a customer. So these are the things that we are looking at. So that is one mindset change that we are talking about. And the third mindset change, which is very important, is that we are looking at correlations and not causal explanations. Now statisticians understand this. They say that it's, we are all familiar with the term root cause analysis. So most of the time we say that business intelligence is all about finding out what is the root cause for some problem. But in real world, we know that finding out the root cause for something is very difficult. So instead of seeking for cause and effect explanations, which has been the predominant way of business intelligence, drilling down into things, looking at cause and effect explanations, here we are looking at what are all the things which are correlated. I don't know at this time whether it, in a particular correlation that I'm looking at, whether it has a causal explanation. But all that I need to know, if I make, if in one customer profile, if there is one change at one end, does it create another change? Or two different profiles of customers, are they doing the same thing at this point of time? If somebody buys a book of A, is a different customer buying the same book A but with a different profile. So we are looking at correlations in product purchases. We are looking at correlations in the way, say, credit cards are being used. We are looking at correlations in basically customer behavior, right? So we are interested in those correlations rather than causal explanations. So if you look at all these three mindset changes that's required, that defines the context for big data. And that in a way is a revolution that is actually transforming how we live and work. So this gives you an idea of the kind of competency changes that one needs to make. So we are not looking at big data as a pure technical problem. We are not looking at it as a pure business problem, but we are looking at it as a combination of all these things based on this kind of a context that we are looking at. So what exactly does organizations have to do? So here I'm mapping out certain stages in evolution in terms of big data as far as organizations are concerned. So big data implies big transformation as far as organizations are concerned. And today organizations are not doing big data just to make some incremental changes. They are using it to make some fundamental changes in the way they manage their customers, fundamental changes in the way they deal with the channels, and how they operate their internal operations, and how they work on their processes. So all, of course, everything begins with the end user. So here we are looking at the driving factor for companies is that we want to offer enhanced customer experience via web and mobile technologies leveraging big data. So it's a different kind of a customer experience that we want to give based on a digitization platform, and the idea is that big data will be driving this. So this is one of the biggest business drivers as far as big data is concerned, that companies are concerned about the experience that their customers are having and desirous of making that experience a very enriched kind of a one. So we want to predict end user behavior and delight them with what I call the next best offer. I mean, can I provide the right product to the customer at the right time? Not go back to the table, redesign the product and then tell the customer this is what I can give. Can I provide to the customer a right product even as I am having the conversation with them? So this is what today predicting end user behavior is all about. So and that's possible through big data. So every big data exercise begins with the end user. So this is the first stage of the evolution that we're talking about. The second stage that I'm highlighting here is the fact that big data is again all about data. So while we are looking at business problem, at the same time we are trying to find answers to business problems through data, and therefore companies have to do a lot of work in terms of building the proof of concepts and the prototypes to evangelize big data within the organization. And the big data application is not independent of your data warehousing and BI infrastructure. It's very much a part of it. It's very much complementary to what we already have. So we are not throwing away what we have already within data warehousing and business intelligence, but we are building upon it. And the third stage in the evolution of big data within an organization is all about transforming what we are doing. So there are a lot of specific solutions based on big data. I highlighted healthcare and insurance, but it's true in all other domains, be it bank or be it an insurance company or be it any financial service organization. At the end of the day, all that we are doing in big data is to gain the analytics advantage. So big data actually comes to life. We are unlocking the value in big data mainly through analytics. So advanced analytics is focused on customer-centric outcomes, and therefore when we combine big data and analytics, so we have an enterprise-wide footprint for improved decision quality. So all along in the earlier era of data warehousing and business intelligence, there was always a concern that we are improving information quality, but it's not getting translated to decision quality, right? We are still providing the right information, but we are not sure whether our end users are taking the right decisions at the right time based on this information that's available. So this gap is what big data and analytics is planning to bridge. So having set this context, let me move on to finer details of what we can do within big data. I hope you can all see this slide. I'm on slide number